Let me ask you something. When did you stop believing? When did you start buying into the lie that what you want is out of reach? You weren't born with doubt. You weren't born thinking small. Somewhere along the way, someone gave you their limitations, and you accepted them as your truth. But I'm here to tell you, belief is a muscle. And the moment you choose to believe as if anything is possible, you change the rules of the game, because your beliefs shape your actions shape your habits, and your habits create your destiny. This isn't about motivation, it's about reclaiming your power. You want to change your life? You've got to believe in a version of yourself that hasn't even shown up yet. You've got to move like it's already done, because when you believe before you see it, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. This is the beginning of a new standard, right here, right now. Your belief system is the silent architect of your destiny. It operates in the background of every decision you make, every word you speak, and every action you take. Most people walk through life completely unaware of how much their beliefs are influencing the outcomes they experience. But the truth is, your beliefs are either the strongest force pushing you forward or the heaviest chain holding you back. They define what you think is possible, what you think you deserve, and how hard you're willing to fight. And until you consciously choose those beliefs, you're living someone else's version of life, someone else's story. What you believe becomes your reality, not because it's magical, but because your brain is always filtering the world through your expectations. If you believe the world is full of opportunity, you'll notice things others ignore. If you believe you're capable, you'll try things others are too scared to attempt. If you believe there's always a way, your mind will stay in problem-solving mode instead of panic mode. But if you believe you're unlucky, unworthy, or stuck, guess what? Your brain will find all the evidence to make those beliefs true. It's not just mindset, it's wiring. Think about a thermostat. You set it to a temperature, and the system works to maintain that climate. That's exactly what your belief system does. If you believe you're a 70-degree person, someone who can only earn a certain income, feel a certain amount of love, have only a moderate level of success, then the moment life heats up beyond that, the moment you start experiencing more than your internal setting allows, you'll unconsciously sabotage yourself. You'll start turning down the heat because your beliefs are trying to keep you consistent with who you think you are. You don't get what you want, you get what you expect. And your expectations are built from your deepest beliefs. That's why someone can want success so badly they can taste it, but still never get there. Because if they believe deep down they're not enough, or that success always slips away, or that they'll lose friends if they win too big, those beliefs will override all their hard work. This is not just about positive. This is about aligning your belief system with the life you want to create. If you don't rewire that foundation, you'll build castles on sand. And sooner or later, they'll sink. Look at the people who have changed the world. They weren't the smartest or most talented in the room, but they were the ones who believed beyond logic, beyond circumstance, beyond doubt. They believed when others laughed. They believed when there was no evidence. They believed when they were broke, alone, and misunderstood. Why? Because they understood something most people don't. Belief is power. It's the first step to transformation. You cannot outperform the story you tell yourself, and that story is fueled by your beliefs. Here's the kicker. Most of your beliefs weren't chosen. They were absorbed. You picked them up from your parents, your teachers, your culture, your past experiences. You were handed limitations like family heirlooms and told, this is just how life is. But what if that's not true? What if you've been living inside a story that never belonged to you? What if today you decided to question everything you've been told about what you can or cannot do? Changing your belief system starts with awareness. You've got to interrupt the old pattern. Catch yourself when you hear that inner voice say, I can't. I'm not ready. I don't deserve that. That's not realistic. Whose voice is that? Is that the voice of your highest self or the voice of your past pain? The moment you question it, you create a crack in the wall. And through that crack, a new belief can grow. Start small. Choose a belief that serves your future. Something like, I am resourceful. I always figure things out. Or, there's always a way and I will find it. Then live as if it's true. Look for evidence to support it. Feel the energy of that belief in your body, because when you believe something emotionally, not just intellectually, You activate a different part of your brain. You change your posture, your voice, your decisions. You start attracting different results. And when those results show up, they reinforce the belief. This is how momentum is born. You don't have to believe everything at once. You just have to believe the next step is possible. That's it. And when you take that step, you become a different person. And that new person believes a little more. Over time, belief becomes identity, and identity is destiny. If you truly want to transform your life, start with your beliefs. Don't chase success from the outside in. Build it from the inside out. Decide who you are. Decide what's possible. Decide what you will not settle for any longer. Because in the end, the life you get is the one your beliefs allow. So raise the bar, set a new standard, and start believing as if anything is possible. Because it is. Most of the limitations you're living with right now aren't real. They're lies you've accepted. Lies that were handed to you when you were too young to question them. Lies that were repeated so many times you mistook them for truth. Somewhere along the way, someone told you that you weren't smart enough, strong enough, talented enough. They told you success was only for certain people, that dreams were dangerous, that failure was shameful. And without even realizing it, you took those beliefs and built your life around them. You lowered your standards, shrunk your vision, and began playing a game designed by fear. But none of that is who you truly are. The truth is, you were born limitless. Look at any child. They believe they can be a superhero, a rock star, a president. They don't worry about being realistic. They don't doubt their power. But over time, the world teaches them to tame their dreams. It punishes boldness and rewards compliance. And slowly, the spark begins to dim. That same thing happened to you, not because you're broken, but because you were conditioned. And that conditioning became the lens through which you see yourself and the world around you. But the lens is not the truth. It's a filter. And you have the power to change it. You see, the most dangerous prison is the one you don't know you're in. When you believe your limitations are facts, you stop fighting. You make peace with a life that's far beneath your potential. You tell yourself stories like, this is just the way I am, or people like me don't get those kinds of opportunities, or I've tried before and it didn't work. And those stories become your ceiling. They cap your energy, your ambition, your decisions. You never even realize how many open doors you're walking past because your mind has already labeled them as locked. The truth is, you're capable of so much more than you've allowed yourself to believe. You've got ideas you haven't acted on, talents you haven't fully used, strength you haven't tapped into. But to access all of that, you've got to do one thing first: call out the lie. You've got to look that voice in the mirror that says you can't and ask, who told you that? Was it a teacher who gave up on you too soon? A parent who was too afraid to dream? A past version of yourself who failed once and never got back up? Whoever it was, they don't get to decide who you become. Not anymore. Every time you say, that's not possible for me, you're not making a statement of fact. You're repeating someone else's fear. Every time you say, I'm just not that kind of person, you're reinforcing an identity you didn't consciously choose. And that's the turning point: choice. Because the moment you realize you've been living a lie, you can choose a new truth. You can rewrite the story. You can decide that your past doesn't get to define your future, that your failures don't get to write your ending, that your circumstances don't get to dictate your worth. This is where transformation begins. Not with motivation, but with brutal honesty. You've got to look at your life and ask yourself, where am I living small because I believed something that isn't true? Maybe you've been playing safe in your career because you think you're not good enough. Maybe you've settled in your relationships because you think you don't deserve more. Maybe you've stopped trying altogether because you've convinced yourself that change is too hard. But none of that is real. It's all a mental cage. And the key has been in your hand the whole time. The way to break out is through action. You don't need to erase every limiting belief all at once. Just challenge one. Pick one area of your life where you've been telling yourself, I can't or I never will, and take one bold step anyway. Do the thing your fear says you can't. Prove it wrong. And in that moment, you'll experience something powerful. Evidence. Evidence that the limitation wasn't real. Evidence that you're stronger than you thought. And once you see it with your own eyes, your belief system starts to shift. Not because someone told you to believe, but because you've lived it. That's how you start building confidence, not by wishing, but by doing. Each time you act in defiance of a lie, you weaken its grip. You begin to replace fear with certainty, doubt with power. And over time, those tiny wins compound into unstoppable momentum. You begin to operate from truth instead of fear, from potential instead of protection. And that changes everything. So let this be the moment you wake up, the moment you stop letting inherited lies dictate your identity, the moment you stop giving your power away to the opinions of people who stop believing in themselves. You were born for more, not just to survive, but to thrive. Not just to exist, but to lead, to grow, to build, to create, to inspire. And the only thing standing between you and the life you were meant to live is a belief system you didn't even choose. But now you can choose. Choose truth. Choose growth. Choose to believe that what you want is not only possible, it's waiting for you to claim it. The chains are imaginary. The gate was never locked. It's time to rise. Emotion is the driving force behind every breakthrough, every change, every transformation you've ever experienced. You can read every book, gather all the strategies, and map out the perfect plan. But until you feel it, until there's an emotional shift, nothing truly changes. Logic can only take you so far. It's emotion that moves the needle. It's emotion that sparks belief and fuels the kind of action that defies odds and rewrites stories. You can try to convince yourself with thoughts, but it's the emotional certainty behind those thoughts that creates momentum. Because when you feel something deeply enough, you stop waiting and start doing. The problem is most people are trying to change their lives with intellect alone. They're trying to think their way into success, into confidence, into courage. But the truth is your brain listens to your body and your body responds to emotion. It's not enough to just say, I believe in myself. You've got to feel what belief feels like. You've got to step into that energy, flood your nervous system with it, and condition it daily until it becomes your new normal. Until your nervous system says, this is who I am now. This is why emotion is the gateway to belief. If you want to believe as if anything is possible, you have to get emotionally connected to that possibility. You've got to visualize the outcome with such intensity that your body doesn't know the difference between the imagined and the real. That's not fantasy, that's rewiring. When you rehearse success with emotion, when you see yourself winning, conquering, achieving, and you feel the joy, the pride, the power of it, you're programming your mind to accept it as truth. And when your brain accepts something as true, it starts finding ways to make it real. Most people don't struggle with belief because they lack ability. They struggle because they haven't felt what it's like to win at the next level. They haven't linked enough emotion to that outcome. They're emotionally connected to their fears, not their future. They feel the pain of failure more than the excitement of success. They're emotionally anchored to their past, not pulled forward by a compelling vision. And whatever you're emotionally attached to, that's what you move toward. So if you want to change your beliefs, change what you're emotionally linked to. If you keep replaying old failures in your mind, you'll keep feeling stuck. If you keep focusing on what could go wrong, your body will go into protection mode. But if you start directing your focus toward what's possible, if you start feeling the future you want as if it's already yours, you'll activate a different emotional state. That emotional state becomes a magnet for new thoughts, new behaviors, and new results. Think about athletes before a big game. They don't just go over strategy. They psych themselves up. They get into a peak state. They tap into the emotion of winning before the game begins. Why? Because that emotional state triggers the level of focus, energy, and aggression needed to dominate. That same principle applies to your life. If you want to show up like a champion, you've got to feel like one before you have the trophy. You can't wait for results to believe. You've got to believe first. And belief starts with emotion. When you carry the emotional certainty of success, even before the results show up, you make different choices. You speak with more power. You move with more purpose. You take more risks. And that's what produces the results that reinforce the belief. It becomes a feedback loop. Emotion fuels belief. Belief fuels action. Action creates results. Results strengthen belief. And the cycle repeats. But you've got to interrupt the old emotional patterns first. If you're stuck in hesitation, doubt, or fear, it's not because you don't know what to do. It's because your nervous system is conditioned to associate change with pain. You've got to flip the script. You've got to link more pain to staying stuck than to stepping up, more pleasure to growth than to comfort. That's an emotional shift. And that shift changes everything. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to feel empowered even in the middle of uncertainty. It's about learning how to generate the emotion you need to move forward instead of waiting for your environment to give it to you. Because if you wait to feel ready, you'll wait forever. If you wait for the perfect moment, it won't come. But if you create the emotional energy of certainty and strength, you'll turn the moment you're in into the perfect one. This is the edge that separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. The ones who rise know how to take control of their emotional state. They don't let external circumstances dictate how they feel. They decide how they're going to feel. And then they bring that energy into everything they do. They rehearse success emotionally until it becomes natural, until belief becomes a state they live in, not a place they visit occasionally. So if you want to believe as if anything is possible, don't start with your thoughts. Start with your emotions. Practice feeling the future you want. Practice celebrating the win before it arrives. Flood your body with the energy of possibility, of certainty, of power, because once you feel it, you'll start to believe it, and once you believe it, the world around you will begin to reflect it. Belief doesn't follow success. Belief creates success. The people who achieve at the highest levels don't wait for proof before they believe. They act as if the outcome is already certain. They carry themselves with the energy, confidence, and presence of someone who has already won. And because they do, the world responds in kind. Most people live the other way around. They say, I'll believe in myself when I see results. I'll be confident once I succeed. I'll go all in when I know it's safe. But that mindset is what keeps them stuck. You don't need permission to act powerful. You don't need validation to start moving. You need to decide that how you show up will no longer be dictated by your current circumstance. When you act as if you've already won, you tap into a different identity. You step into a future version of yourself, not a fantasy, but a standard. You don't wait for courage to act. You act and the courage shows up. You don't need the world to give you evidence. You become the evidence, because every move you make in that elevated state, how you speak, how you walk, how you handle challenges, starts to rewire your nervous system to believe that this is who you are now. This is how transformation begins. Not with waiting, not with wishing, but with a bold shift in identity. Think about the most magnetic, powerful people you've ever met. They walk into a room and something changes. People lean in. Why? Because they don't question their value. They don't tiptoe around their dreams. They own their space. They've practiced acting with certainty so often that it's become second nature. And that certainty is contagious. The world responds to the energy you bring. If you bring the energy of doubt, you attract resistance. If you bring the energy of certainty, you attract opportunity. It's not luck, it's alignment. You have to stop showing up as a watered-down version of yourself. Stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. Stop waiting for the right time, the right mood, the right level of preparation. You have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am now, not someday, not when everything's perfect, now. Because every time you delay that decision, you train your brain to hesitate. You strengthen the muscle of inaction. But every time you move with the energy of the result already achieved, you start closing the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. The power of acting as if isn't about pretending. It's about embody. It's about deciding that your actions are no longer going to be driven by fear or history, but by vision. It's about adopting the posture, the tone, the mindset of the version of you who already has what you want. Because when you act from that place, you make choices that align with your desired future instead of reacting from your current limitations. Start asking yourself better questions. How would the successful version of me approach this conversation? How would the confident version of me walk into this room? How would the committed version of me handle this challenge? These questions force you to shift your emotional state, and your emotional state determines your performance. Most people are waiting for the environment to create their state, but the greats, the ones who shift their lives permanently, They learn to generate the state first. And from that state, they dominate. When you act as if you've already won, your body language changes. You stand taller, you breathe deeper, you make eye contact, you speak with clarity. These changes aren't small. They're powerful signals to your nervous system that you are safe, strong, and capable. And the more you operate from this physiology, the more natural it becomes. You're not faking it. You're awakening a version of yourself that's always been there, just buried under years of fear and doubt. This doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you refuse to be defined by it. Reality is not fixed. It's shaped by the beliefs and energy you bring to it. Acting as if doesn't mean being arrogant or delusional. It means walking in faith. It means trusting your ability to figure things out. It means showing up with intention and presence, even when you don't have all the answers. Because when you carry yourself with the presence of a winner, people start to treat you like one. Opportunities open, conversations shift, possibilities emerge. The truth is, you've already got everything you need inside you. You just haven't fully committed to using it. You've been dipping your toe in the water when what's required is cannonball level certainty. You've been asking for permission when what's needed is declaration. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be in motion. You don't need more time, you need more intensity. The version of you that already has the life you want isn't waiting. They're already doing, already deciding, already owning their role in the outcome. So decide today to show up differently. Don't let your past play the lead role in your future. Don't let fear be your advisor. Let vision take the wheel. Move, speak, think, and lead like the result is inevitable. Because when you do that, you become magnetic. You become influential. You become powerful. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And when you change, everything changes. Your environment is constantly shaping your belief system, whether you realize it or not. The people you talk to, the conversations you engage in, the content you consume, the energy you surround yourself with, all of it is either reinforcing your power or draining it. Belief is not built in a vacuum. It's influenced, it's cultivated. And if you're not intentional about shaping your environment will shape you by default. That's why so many people struggle to believe in bigger possibilities. They're spending every day in places and around people who reinforce limitation, fear, and mediocrity. You can't expect to dream big while living small. You can't expect to stretch yourself while being surrounded by people who are addicted to comfort and afraid of change. If you want to grow, you need to be in environments that demand growth, not just support it. You need people in your life who don't flinch when you talk about big visions. People who challenge your thinking, who hold you to a higher standard, who reflect back the strongest version of you, not the safest one, because you will rise or fall to the level of your environment. It's not a maybe, it's a guarantee. Have you ever had a moment where you left a conversation feeling 10 feet tall, where someone believed in you so deeply that you started to believe in yourself just a little more? That wasn't magic. That was alignment. That was the power of being around someone whose standard for you was higher than the one you had for yourself. And that's the kind of energy you need to be exposed to regularly if you want to build a belief system that makes anything feel possible. But the reverse is also true. Spend too much time around people who play small, who gossip, who complain, who normalize doubt, and your belief begins to erode. Not all at once, but slowly, subtly. You stop dreaming out loud. You start hiding your ambition. You shrink, not because you want to, but because you're trying to fit into an environment that doesn't match your vision. And over time, that shrinking becomes a habit. You start calling it realistic. You start confusing fear with maturity. But deep down, you know what's happening. You're compromising. The greats never wait for the perfect environment. They create it. They become intentional curators of what they allow into their mental and emotional space. That means setting boundaries. That means letting go of relationships that are rooted in the past instead of the future. That means choosing podcasts, books, communities, and conversations that stretch your thinking instead of shrinking your perspective. It means turning your environment into a greenhouse for belief, a place where boldness is normal, where risk is encouraged, and where growth is celebrated. This doesn't mean cutting everyone out of your life. It means being clear about what conversations get to influence your mindset. It means knowing the difference between someone who loves you and someone who challenges you, because not everyone who loves you will understand your path. Some people will support your comfort, not your growth. And you've got to have the courage to protect your mind from voices that don't align with where you're headed, even if those voices come from people you care about. If you want to believe as if anything is possible, you need to start spending time in rooms where it actually feels possible, where people talk about impact, not just income, where the question isn't, can I do it, but how fast can I make it happen? Where belief isn't seen as arrogance, but as necessity. Because in that kind of environment, your nervous system begins to adapt. What once felt impossible starts to feel inevitable, not because you've changed your DNA, but because you've changed your exposure. And exposure is everything. One powerful conversation can rewire years of doubt. One event, one mentor, one piece of content can shift the entire trajectory of your belief system. But you have to seek it out. You have to be hungry enough to place yourself in the right rooms, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable, because growth is always found just beyond the edge of comfort. And the right environment will always stretch you past what you thought was your limit. Ask yourself, who are the 5 people I speak with the most? What do they believe is possible for their own lives? What do they believe is possible for mine? Are they pushing me forward or pulling me back? Are they challenging me to step up or enabling me to stay the same? These are not easy questions, but they're necessary ones, because your future is not just shaped by your vision, it's shaped by the vision of those you surround yourself with. So start auditing your environment. Start building a world around you that reflects the world you want to live in. Don't just dream big. Surround yourself with people who dream bigger. Don't just talk about belief. Immerse yourself in conversations where belief is the baseline. Feed your mind. Your belief system isn't just formed by what you say, it's shaped by what you do consistently. Repetition is the mother of all skill, but it's also the mother of all belief. What you do over and over again becomes not just what you're good at, but what you begin to identify with. You can't just tell yourself you're confident. You've got to behave confidently day in and day out. You can't just say you're disciplined. You have to act with discipline when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when no one is watching. Because every time you do, you're casting a vote for who you are. And over time, that repetition builds a foundation of belief that is unshakable. Most people are waiting for belief to strike like lightning. They want to feel certain before they commit. They want to feel inspired before they take action. The belief doesn't show up first. It's built one small intentional repetition at a time. You do something difficult and you show yourself, I can handle this. You follow through when it's easier to quit, and you build proof that your word matters. You stretch yourself just a little more than yesterday, and you begin to see yourself differently. This is the quiet work of belief. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's powerful. The truth is, confidence doesn't come from achievement, it comes from consistency. You can't just rely on hype or momentary motivation. You've got to create a rhythm, a routine, a ritual that reinforces your desired identity over and over again. When your actions align with your vision, even in the smallest ways, you start to feel momentum. And momentum, repeated long enough, creates certainty. It creates identity. And when your identity shifts, everything in your life begins to reflect that shift. This is why so many people struggle to truly believe in themselves. They're not reinforcing their beliefs with consistent action. They say one thing but do another. They set goals but don't back them up with behavior. And every time they break that alignment, they weaken their belief, not because they're broken, but because they haven't conditioned belief through repetition. Belief is a muscle. You've got to train it. And you train it by aligning what you say with what you do day after day, even when it's hard. Think about it. When was the last time you felt deeply proud of yourself? It probably wasn't because of some huge public win. It was likely because you did something difficult, something you didn't feel like doing, and you did it anyway. That feeling, that internal pride, is a sign that you're building belief. That's your system recognizing alignment between your intention and your execution. And the more often you create that alignment, the stronger your belief becomes. Repetition also rewires your nervous system. The first time you try something new, your brain screams for safety. It's uncomfortable, it's uncertain. But the second time, a little easier. The third, even better. By the 10th or 20th repetition, The action starts to feel natural. It becomes part of who you are. That's the beauty of repetition. It turns fear into familiarity. It turns self-doubt into self-trust. And that shift in trust is the birthplace of belief. You have to make repetition your ally, not your enemy. Most people are already repeating something, just not what serves them. They're repeating patterns of procrastination, patterns of avoidance, patterns of negative self-talk. And guess what? That repetition is shaping belief too. So the question isn't whether repetition is at work in your life. The question is, what are you repeating? Because whatever you repeat, you become. This is why rituals are so powerful. Rituals aren't just routines. They're sacred repetitions. They're signals to your mind and body that say, this is who I am. Whether it's your morning routine, your focus practices, your workouts, or how you start your meetings, every ritual is a chance to condition belief. You're not just showing up for the task. You're showing up for your identity. You're rehearsing greatness. You're reinforcing the idea that you are someone who follows through, someone who shows up powerfully, someone who refuses to negotiate with fear. And the beautiful part, you don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to do it consistently. Because belief isn't born in perfect conditions. It's born in persistence. It's born when you keep showing up, even when the voice in your head says it's not working. It's born when you choose discipline over comfort, when you take the next step even when you can't see the whole path. That's what builds internal credibility. That's what builds trust. And that trust is the seed of belief. So if you want to learn to believe as if anything is possible, start by looking at your daily repetitions. What are you practicing every day with your thoughts, your behaviors, your energy? Are you reinforcing possibility or reinforcing limitation? Are you conditioning belief or conditioning doubt? Because your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest habits. And if those habits are intentional, repeated, and aligned with your vision, belief becomes inevitable. You don't need to wait for confidence to begin. Start with the repetition. Start with one habit, one shift, one behavior that reflects the person you want to become. Do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Stack those wins, stack that alignment. Over time, those repetitions will forge an identity so solid, so aligned, so powerful that belief won't just be something you try to have. It'll be who you are. Not a hope, not a dream, a fact. And from that place, anything becomes possible.